Hi, everybody. I'm John Self. Welcome to Office Hours. It's 4 o'clock. It's Wednesday afternoon. It is, I think, the 21st. Yep, nope, it's the 22nd. So we're delighted you're with us today. We've got a great program set up. We're going to be focusing today on mistakes that you can make in the job search process that will absolutely can really hurt your career. And it's basically the questions you don't ask and the tips and the hints about what's going on that you really don't really respond to because you don't want to make somebody upset. You don't want to fall out of favor with the recruiter. You don't want to upset the employer. And we're going to talk about all of that stuff today. Uh, First of all, a little housekeeping. Tomorrow morning at 7:30 a.m., we have our regular Thursday morning session of Career Live. We talk about the week's events in health and employment. There have been some more strategic layoffs in healthcare and across the country. So although there are no layoffs that are really what we call economic downturn layoffs, there are a lot of strategic layoffs where companies are adjusting their headcount to maximize their revenue or their net revenue, or net income. And so those are going to continue to happen. Companies, as a result of the pandemic, learned they can do more with less. And so as they go forward, they keep pushing, they keep testing how fewer people they need to do more. And I suspicion that we're not going to see any major growth in the executive and management ranks for at least through the end of 2025, Q4 2025. So that's going to be that's going to be a very, very heavy weight on the executive and management job market. Today, we want to talk about some things that really do hurt people in the job search. And it is, how to avoid damaging job search mistakes, the kind of mistakes that will lead to short tenures. Today's job market, and we just kind of hinted at it, it's pretty unforgiving. And it's really hyper competitive. And any of you that have been searching for a job know that's the case, that it's really just very, very difficult to get a job. You have comments about how people have filed over 100 or 120 or 130 online applications and maybe got one or two offers. So it's really, really a tough situation. And I think that there's a big disconnect with a lot of job seekers because they're holding on to their default position, which is this is the way it's always been. This is what I've always done. This is what I've always been comfortable with, and it's always worked in the past. And so they don't want to admit that things have changed so dramatically and that the market for executive and managers has shrunk so significantly that what worked in the past won't work in the future. And so that significant disconnect leads people into a lot of mistakes. Now, to borrow a theme from the old initial way, if you did if you did computer coding, if then that, or if this, then that happens. Well, what we're going to talk about today is when and then what you have to do about it. So, and we mentioned this yesterday in our Lunch and Learn program that was encore broadcast again today at noon. When the prep time for submitting one application is 40 to 90 minutes. Now that's gosh, and when I was coming up, you never spent more than about 30 minutes applying for a job. There was some online, but mostly not. When the average number of applicants for a good job is 100 to 50 to 400 to 1, that's your odds for the chances of you getting the job. And in some cases, with people applying for jobs they don't qualify for, in some cases, there are 800 or 900 or over 1,000 people. And so that's just a lot of noise that you have to plow through. When 7 in 10 resumes are rejected before they're ever seen by a recruiter, when applicants submit 100 or more online applications to get one or two offers, when the average time to hire is 8 to 14 months, then you must be on your A game, including being prepared to ask probing questions to ensure that you understand the details of the job. Now, again, a quote that I've used many times in the past, and I think it is so appropriate for the recruiting business today and the job search business today. It's not what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so. And, what you knew for sure 10 years ago today just ain't so. What you knew 5 to 7 or 8 years ago today just ain't so. It's changing that fast. And people who keep saying, nope, AI is really not going to have an effect on the market. It's really just going to make us all more efficient. They are just whistling past the graveyard. There are too many people, and the evidence of too many of the developments that are speeding to market to say that this is not going to affect employment. And as AI eliminates more entry level jobs, the management and executive ranks will continue to shrink. So if you're an executive, you're not going to lose your job because of AI. You may lose your job because a lot of other people who were eliminated by AI got the axe. So you have to really change your thinking. And I really want to encourage you to give this a lot of thought. If you want to look at this slide deck again, email me at info@johngself.com. I'm glad to share it with you. But please don't just sit back and say, nah, I don't have to worry, because you are the kind of person that we see here all the time, 8, 9, 10 years into 10 months into a job search, and they've gotten exactly nowhere. And I will tell you that, it's just not something you can afford to do, because severance pay is going down while the time to hire is going up. Now, when you look at the interpretation of what's going on and why so many people make mistakes in the job recruiting process, number one, and this has been around since day one, applicants hear what they want to hear. Okay. 2, confident applicants are the worst when it comes to asking hard questions. They just assume, I got this, I understand this, I am an successful CEO, and that there can't be that many things that hint at this organization that I don't understand. And so they'll ask some probing questions, but they don't ever really get serious and bore in. Their hiring validates what they thought they heard. Okay. So when they get the offer, they go, yeah, man, they're hiring me because I do this and I'm good at this and I'm good at this. But if they heard what they wanted to hear, there is going to be a disconnect, and there's a good chance that somebody will not be a long-term player. Culture eats talent every time, and probably twice on Sunday. So it's just something you have to be in preparation and be sensitive to. Now, left to pursue other opportunities. You see this all the time in press releases. I saw it 7 or 8 times this week alone. Now, what does that mean? It means the client or the recruiter did not disclose the relevant information about what the job was really about what the challenges really were, about what the level of expectation really was, about what success would look like. The client or the recruiter just lied. Okay, happens all the time. It happens all the time. You cannot assume that just because they're offering you a job or they're interested in you, and that makes your ego feel good and you're a really good person, that they must also be truthful, because they lie all the time. The job applicant did not ask the critical questions, and boy, does this happen more than you would ever imagine possible. Another option is all of the above. Okay. The final option is no one was smart enough to figure it all out, and it happened again and again and again, and nobody really understands why they can't find the right person. Now, this recruiting is really not rocket science. A matter of fact, I'm living proof that maybe the medium porch light on the block, who was very successful in recruiting, is evidence that maybe the smartest people in the world don't have to be recruiters. But there are constant breakdowns, and the breakdowns are between the candidates not doing their part, the employer not being truthful or doing their part, and the recruiter being more interested in their fee. Now, here's a classic case. I know about this case very well because I was very much involved. I was not the recruiter, but I advised one of the people involved. Catholic health system in the Southwest. We won't get too specific about where it was because it wouldn't take long for those of you in healthcare to figure it out and start gossiping about it. They had a reputation for financial success, but they had a challenging medical staff who wanted it their way. It was essentially a private staff, organized in kind of the old way. And if anybody came in and started trying to make changes, even changes that reflected best practices elsewhere in the United States, and they didn't want it, there were big problems. It was a revolving door for CEOs. Now, the system decided they had to do something. So they identified a candidate, a woman who was really exceptional at building relationships with physicians and was able to get physician medical staff issues under control. She had been remarkable in her career, and she understood what they wanted her to do was keep the profitability, but try to get the medical staff under control and move them to the 20th century. This with visible proof that all of her predecessors had failed because the medical staff was so strong and entrenched. And part of their strength came from the fact that it was a Catholic health system, and they were very, very connected with the remaining nuns in the convent who still held sway over how the hospital operations ran. Well, when she started trying to offer suggestions about how they needed to change and maybe begin to look at EHR and all those other things that everybody else in the country was doing, and to improve on case management so the hospital could improve their cash position, the medical staff rebelled again, and corporate threw her under the first available bus. And this was the fourth or fifth time that had happened. Now, my God, I mean, that's a classic kerfuffle. I mean, it's just a mess. And it sort of made me angry because the person I wasn't advising the person who got terminated, but it really derailed her career as a system CEO. Boom. I don't think she ever did anything in that market again. And she was a competent lady who was respected in the other places she had worked. So here's what's happening. We have a dysfunctional situation, so we wash, we rinse, and we repeat. Wash, rinse, and repeat. We keep doing that because it seems easier to do that than to go in and really have the knockdown, drag-out fight with the physicians that need to take place. And here's the deal. They were scared that the physicians would go someplace else. Well, let me tell you where the someplace else was in that marketplace. CHS and HCA. Two of the toughest organizations. I mean, they're physician friendly, but let me tell you something. Physicians can't play that kind of power politics in a for-profit hospital, especially with CHS at the time and HCA. And to be quite honest, that was just, I don't even understand why the health system didn't understand to call their bluff, because they could have gone other places, but I guarantee you they wouldn't have been, their bad behavior would not have been tolerated. So what would they kept doing? Wash, rinse, repeat. When you're in a search, there's ample opportunity for you to get ambushed. Okay? You're vulnerable. Now, a lot of people looking for jobs now have found their jobs eliminated, or they've gotten caught in a political switch, or they've just got caught with an unethical CEO who made a change in the succession plan without any announcement and put somebody in line that wasn't even qualified. Okay? So those things happen. I mean, that story, some variation of it is all over the country, and it's not just healthcare, it's a lot of other businesses as well. So when you're in the job market, okay, and you're looking for a job and it's really difficult and you're feeling kind of the pressure, you got to get back to work, even if you've got a great severance, you know that you're staying out too long, it's going to look bad. And so when you're in a search, you're getting information, and now you're in the risk reward balancing act. What can I take, and what do I need to walk away from? And the real key question is, how do you avoid a career derailment? And I think it's important that you be confident and that you know what you're capable of doing. That's really, really important. But you have to understand that a short tenure can cause the kind of damage to your career that you may never fully recover from. And I have seen that multiple times in my career. So when you are in the market and you are trying to sort everything out, I'm going to give you some bad news. The angel from on high is not going to come down and rescue you. You're expected to do that yourself. No one is going to come for you. It's all on you. And so you have to be prepared. And you can't just go into it haphazardly, lackadaisically. You can't go in and say, well, I don't need to really worry about all this stuff that everybody's talking about with all my branding and all that other stuff. I've never worried about that in the past. I've always gotten by on doing a good job. Well, even that scenario doesn't work so well anymore. So no one's gonna come to help you. It's not gonna just magically, your problems not magically gonna go away. It's all on you. So I think it's important to understand the process. Now, I was an executive recruiter, as you saw, for 27 years. I have seen the good, the bad, and the bloody ugly. And believe me, there is a lot of damn bloody ugly out there. I have seen things that I thought were absolutely atrocious. I have seen recruiters do things to people that hurt their careers. I have seen employers do things that have hurt recruiters and hurt the prospective candidate. So it's not about you. It is a transaction designed to fill an order with credible applicants. So, at the end of the day, I'm going to say this again later, but I think it was worth emphasizing. Recruiters are nice people, and there's some recruiters that aren't so nice, and sometimes it's hard to tell which is which because they have their mask on when you're dealing with them. But one of the things you have to understand is what they are all about, what keeps them moving forward, what keeps them employed, which helps them remain as a partner, is the next fee. And they don't get the next fee if they take too long on searches, or if they irritate clients. And so it's all transactional. It's all fee focused. Matter of fact, Korn Ferry even has a term called client facing partners. Those partners do very little of the search work. They're out there mainly keeping the partners happy or keeping the client happy and kind of moving the process along and smoothing out the politics. And if they have to keep something from you, and I'm not singling out Korn Ferry here, but if they have to keep something from you to protect them and their relationship with that client so they get that next follow-up search, then believe me, buddy, they're not going to be swept with honesty and goodness of heart. And you may take it in the back if you're not careful. So you have to ask the questions. It's all down to you. No one's going to come save you. You have to ask the question. Now, for the firm, it's about looking good. Finding good candidates, they want to do that. They want to avoid risk, and they want to close the deal as quickly as possible. So it's almost like, if you remember in the 90s, President Clinton was trying to negotiate a deal with the military about gays in the military, and they finally came up with a policy that basically bought him time, I guess, kind of, sort of, but it was called "Don't Ask, but Don't Tell." Because if you told somebody in the military, and somebody in authority, an officer, that you were gay, you were going to be run out of the military. So you couldn't ask, and they didn't need to tell. Well, that's the way a lot of it is in recruiting today. Don't ask, don't tell recruiting. Now, firms and recruiters have a tendency not to divulge the past. A hospital in Fort Worth they were getting it under control, but they'd had a lot of problems, a lot of dysfunctional culture, and we divulged that to the applicant. And the CFO got really angry and said, "You can't tell them that." And I said, "Why? Isn't it true?" "Yes, but then nobody will want to come here." And my response was, "Gee, Gail, don't you think it's now is the least embarrassing time for them to find out?" People who, if you tell them the bad stuff and you line it out for them, they're going to either say, "Nope, that's not for me," or they're going to say, "Yep, I've got some really heavy duty big boy pants on, and now that I know this, I know how to deal with it." Okay? But keep in mind, as a general rule, firms and recruiters will not divulge the worst in the process. You will be told a lot, but you need to listen carefully, because you will not be told enough. Okay? You'll be told a lot of information, but you have to understand that the key information that could make a difference between whether you are whether you really want to take this job is something that you just have to listen between the lines, and you have to answer the questions. Okay, this is very, very important. Now, one of our Pro Plus tips for today, number one, is select a coach and an advisor who knows the process inside and out. There are a lot of coaches that have coached a lot of people, and they're very, very competent, wonderful, talented people, very articulate, and really can help you grow. They don't all understand the recruiting process because they've not been in on the inside. They've seen it, they've watched candidates go through it, so they have a good idea of what can and can't happen. I would encourage you to, if in this market today, really give heavier weight to someone who used to be an executive recruiter who's now a coach because they understand how the market operates and how the process operates. So hire if you're going to hire a coach, and I really advise that, hire someone who knows the process inside and out. I spent 27 years doing that. Our Pro Plus tip 2 is a recruiter is more concerned with his fee or her fee than your career, because if they do the right thing and they take good care of you, but they irritate the client, and they do that several times, they're going to lose clients, and then they're going to lose their partnership and their job. So what a recruiter is going to do is take care of himself or herself first. Why? Because they have families to take care of. They have private school tuition to pay. They have country club dues to pay. They have big time investments. They may have be upside down in crypto. Who knows? But they are going to take care of themselves. They may know you, they may like you, but at the end of the day, you are strictly product. You are an inventory for a transaction. And I don't mean for it to sound so cruel, but you have to be darn careful about trusting someone in a search process, because you can then find yourself kind of being abused a little bit. Now, the second thing you've got to do, and this is so difficult, is that people they hate to ask those questions. Well, I don't want to upset anybody, and that's not the nature of a lot of people. They're not used to asking tough questions like I am. I spent a lot of years as a crime writer and investigative reporter, interviewing people who didn't want to talk to me, interviewing people who had kind of bent the rules a little bit and got caught and were really angry that I was asking questions. I remember a county judge up in Houston County. He got really angry with me one time when I was at the Houston Post, and I showed up years later, and by golly, that guy was still in office. And he had kind of skated close to the line, but I don't think he ever crossed it. And I left the post before that ever was resolved. But he remembered me, and he said, "I remember you. You were one of those nosy reporters from Houston that was causing all that problem for me up here." And I remember saying, I was in the middle of trying to close a big EMS deal, and all I could think to say was, Your Honor, all I can do is plead Mark Twain's comment. I didn't want to do it, but I couldn't find honest work at the time. And the room died laughing, and he kind of had to let it go because everybody laughed. And I lucked out because I had a line that I remembered, who knows why. But in the news business, you got to ask tough questions. You're going to make people mad. Well, you have to ask tough questions in the process of the search, and you weren't going to worry. You don't want to make people mad. You don't want to irritate somebody again, then get the job, and then find yourself in a pickle with your new employer. Or you don't want to irritate the recruiter, because let me tell you something: recruiters won't do anything, blatant. They won't do anything visible, but you will die from 1,000 cuts. Okay, the second problem, you got to stop listening for what you want to hear. Okay, you need to park your damn ego at the door. Stop listening for what you want to hear. How many people, here are things that you need to be asking. How many people have been in the role the last 5 years? What's going on here? Is it what's causing the problem? What are the issues I'm going to have to deal with? Is it a turnaround, or is it poor governance? Is it turnaround, or other issues that are dysfunctional with the culture? Are there any internal applications? Somebody asked a recruiter that the other day, and he said, "Well, we won't discuss that with you at all." And you know what I would have done? I would have said, "Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And I don't think if you can't be forthright with me, then I'm not going to be forthright with you. Thank you very much," and drop out. I mean, now when you do that, you're going to probably burn that relationship. But that's just, some recruiters don't want to tell you that because they don't want to lose a good candidate. Okay. And they don't want to lose a good candidate because they need to have a panel. Even if they've got a home run internal candidate, they still need to have a competitive panel. And that's one of the reasons they're being paid. And so they don't want to tell you, "Oh my God, there's a guy that's going to knock it out of the park," and he's the internal candidate. Why would you even continue in the search? So you have to pick up that. So if the recruiter won't tell you, throughout the day, as you talk to other members of the recruit team, are there any internal candidates? And even you get down to the hiring manager, just say, "I keep hearing that there might be an internal candidate. I was just curious, kind of where I stood in this process." Okay. Even if you show up as a nice looking show pony, you can always, understand where you need to understand where you stand so that if this process drags on and on and on, you can withdraw without knowing that you didn't lose anything. Now, you have to be an active listener and you have to be a prolific note taker. I have found that note taking really disconcerts people, but you want to make a good record of everything that's going on. Now we have a lot of legal kerfuffle in the New York and Washington and Atlanta area, and some people who are not in trouble are not in trouble because they took prolific notes in meetings, and so they were able to show, here are my notes. And that has helped people more than not. Now, I know some people say, no, never write anything down because then that could hurt you in a lawsuit. Yeah, it could. But, you can scare yourself 7 ways from Sunday about 100 different things. Take the damn notes in the meeting. If they ask questions, write down the questions they're asking. Why? Because you're going to hear them again. And if you're smart and say you're 40 years old and you've got 5 or 6 or 7 more, assignments as you move toward your final goal where you want to end up in your career, you're going to hear those questions over and over again. So build a catalog of all the questions you're asked, but specifically in the search that you're involved, take notes. And when you ask questions, are there any internal candidates? And they say absolutely not, write absolutely not down, because they know that they're going to be held accountable if they're not telling you the truth. Now, another issue, you gotta be curious. I think one reason that I enjoyed being a reporter so much is it gave agency to my curiosity. I could ask questions. And sometimes people would say, what does that have to do with this story? I don't know. I was just curious. I think the other thing is that I was a good recruiter because I listened very carefully to people. I listened when they told their story. And when I heard things that just didn't quite make sense, my curiosity would get the best of me and I'd start asking kind of questions for clarity. Now, if you hear vagueness in a job interview and you ask the client a question and they don't answer it, you may not want to immediately challenge them, but you probably want to make a note of that and double back toward the end of your time together. Say, now, I asked about this a few minutes ago and I'm not really clear on your answer, and then ask the question again. Okay? If the recruiter refused to discuss an issue, or if somebody refuses to discuss an issue with you, that's a big yellow flag and it's turning red. So be very, very careful if somebody refuses to discuss an issue with you. Now, here's another key problem. The vast majority of candidates avoid conflict questions. Why did the last person leave? What could you have done better to ensure his or her success? Who pulled the trigger, the market board or the corporate board? Or, did somebody else have an influence? What role did the medical staff, or what role did the union play, or some other? All the issues that come into play in manufacturing, retail, there are all of these communities, there are all these stakeholders. You need to understand if the person before you got fired or left to pursue other opportunities, you need to understand why. What's the market turnover rate for this organization? And as you go through the various interviews, just say, why do you work here? If you've been here 5 or 6 or 7, why do you stay? That's a very telling. The answer you get is going to be very telling. What will the key employees tell you about the leadership turnover? What will they tell you about the leadership style of governing? One of the things that people very rarely ask, there's 2 things they very rarely ask. Number one, how will you define my success in 6 months or a year? You know why you want to ask that? Because you hear what you want to hear. So many people have gotten fired because they came in and they knew what their strengths were, and their strengths were celebrated, but that's not exactly what the board wanted them to achieve. And so they went off and went chasing after their strengths and fixing those problems that they were comfortable fixing, and didn't address the more pressing issues from the board's perspective. And after 6 or 8 months, they decided to part ways. And usually the CEO by that time gets a little bit, he gets a little bit entitled, or she gets a little bit entitled, and they may argue over what the priorities really need to be. Well, if you're a CEO, you have a say in that, but you have a boss. And if they don't agree with your priorities, you need to stop real quickly, kind of end the meeting as soon as you can and say, yes, I understand. I will get back to you and I'll get you a plan. And then you need to go say, okay, they're telling me something else. I don't agree with this. I got to get out of here. Okay. You can't just ignore what the board is saying. That's a recipe for disaster. But you want to know, how will they define success in 6 months or a year? Because that's what's going to determine whether they say you've been successful or not. The other thing you need to do is to ask about the culture, because the culture kills everything. If you're not in sync with the organization's culture, you will not succeed. That's probably the biggest reason that so many executives fail. And the fail rate for executives, it's between 50 and 65 or 70% leave within the first 18 months because it's not a fit, or they're not doing what the board wants them to do, or their boss wants them to do. So you have to understand that search firms have a terrible record of success. And the numbers haven't gotten any better since they since they were tracked starting in mid 1990s. So you can't say, well, this is not really a risk process for me. Well, it is. It is a big time risk for you. And you have to be sure you're asking all the questions. You have to understand this is a broken system and you're exposed. I don't care how successful you've been or how smart you think you are. If you're in looking for a job, it is a risky proposition. Ask how they're going to define your success, define the culture. Why do people get fired around here? Now, here's our plus 3 tip. You must do your homework, a deep dive, and ask the tough questions. So if you know somebody at one of the big distribution companies and you're looking at an organization within another territory, and you have great contacts at the corporate level of that distribution company, you can go talk to them and say, is that one of your clients? Yes, we do business with them. Why are they having so many CEOs? I mean, I may go there, and if I do, you'll have a very loyal person supporting you on the inside. But tell me, can you just give me some very confidential, off the record, that I'll never repeat? You'll never know that nobody will ever know that I talked to you. Why are they turning over CEOs? Or why is their CFO, they've gone through 4 CFOs in 8 years? That's a lot. Why is that happening? What are your salesmen telling you about that? And that can be a great source of information. Other people that you know in the community that you can trust, that will talk to you about what's happening, that if you're not a member of that community, you have to look across the board. Now, you have to be smart. You have to be careful. You have to be very discreet. But you have to find people who will help you get additional business intelligence on what's going on in that organization. You have to be prepared to ask the tough questions. And one of the toughest questions, where are the meadow muffins? Another way of saying that is, where are the sacred cows? I won't leave that up too long because we're getting ready to go into the dinner hour. But where are the sacred cows? What are those? What do I have to be careful of? And that's when you ask that question to the members of the interview team. What are the sacred cows around here? The last person that was here, did they step on any sacred cows? Did they do something they shouldn't have done? And people will tend to tell you in the middle of an interview, once they've decided they like you and trust you. And so that's why you're in an interview, you're always trying to promote your likability and your trust so that you can get information from them. Okay? Very, very, very important point. You can't go in and just answer questions. You have to go in and build relationships with everybody that's interviewing you, because otherwise you're not going to get the kind of feedback that can help you avoid a serious career mistake. So if the prospective employer does not answer a critical question, rephrase it and ask it again before the end of the interview. That is so important. You got to keep pushing back. And one of the phrases I always used is, now, you may have, I'm sorry, when you're interviewing, you're hearing so much information and you get a little bit nervous, and could we go back? I just need some help with this one issue. I'm not sure I clearly understood it, and then ask the question again, because they can ignore you the first time, but it's going to be really hard for them to ignore you the second time. And finally, if the potential employer eliminates you because you ask tough probing questions, good. Don't feel badly about that. That's a red badge of courage for you. You know why? Because you were talking to the wrong people to begin with, and God was watching over you. You were talking to the wrong people. If they don't like your questions, if they don't like your effort to get to the truth, then don't work for those people. That's not who you want to be with. Okay. So that's just a key element. Don't go to work for people who are not going to be candid with you in the search process. Now, here's your key takeaways, I think. Most executives do not understand the talent acquisition process, and so they don't know what to look for. If you're one of our group members in your career community, or if you're a premium coaching client, we will be there with you all the way to answer your questions and to help you sort out what's happening to you in the career process, in that search process. One of the things that you have to understand is you are responsible for avoiding a career mistake. You are responsible. It's possible that they could do something and didn't tell you the truth, and it was really a bad situation. But a lot of times those issues, those mistakes occur because the applicant did not do their part of the process in the search routine. Number 3, employers dissemble, recruiters obfuscate. In other words, it's transactional, so somebody's going to be lying to you if you're not careful. Be aware, be sensitive, know what, use common sense. Don't get carried away, okay? If you're being, it's very flattering to be recruited, but don't get carried away. Pay attention. The process is not about you. It should be, but it's not. It should be, but it's not. So I want you to be very careful. Don't let this happen to you. Do not let yourself be swept along by the current, which is the recruiting process. It's heady stuff. Here's a big time recruiting firm coming to you because they want you to consider being the CEO or the chief operating officer of this entity or that entity. That's heady stuff. I understand. But you have to understand that a bad mistake can cripple your career. You have to understand that the talent acquisition process is not in your favor. It's transactional and it's broken as hell. So there are some very good people in it, and there's some very honorable people in it, but there are a lot of people in it who are in it for the fee, who are in it for their reputation, who are in it to keep that country club membership funded and their private school tuition paid. So when you start thinking about career, the process in those terms, you can get through it with no muss or fuss as long as you have your radar running at high degree of sensitivity the whole time. And if you hear stuff, don't ignore it. Don't ignore it. If you hear something that concerns you, there's probably a reason it concerns you. Ask your coach. If you're out there as a lone wolf, find somebody you can trust, but you need somebody else who can give you, somebody who knows the process. Don't go talk to somebody who hasn't looked for a job in 10 years, because believe me, in today's market, they don't know anything from anything. It's changed that much. But you can find someone who knows the process, who's out there, who sees what's going on, and can help you. And you need to find that person to avoid a mistake. You don't need to be... You don't need somebody to have to come for you at the last minute for a deep water rescue to save your career. I want to thank you, all of you, for joining us today. I know we get a lot of people who watch this on replay. We are probably going to replay this tomorrow at noon. So we hope if you missed it, or if you want other friends to see it, it's going to be on at noon on YouTube, on LinkedIn, and on Facebook. And so we hope you'll join us. It'll also be available later this afternoon on YouTube, on Guiding Your Career, John G. Self's YouTube page. So check it out, and we'll have it up. Now, another word. These live streams, these live coaching sessions, we've been making them available to the public as we try to build our membership program. Well, we're really working now and powering up our marketing for the membership program. We've sort of worked out the kinks, and we're going to start really soliciting more members. As we build our membership, this kind of content will be members-only content. So if you like what you're seeing, Become a founding member today. That locks in your membership forever. You will never have an increase on your $49 a month. So every week we're going to be, unless we are off for the summer or off for a week in the summer, you're going to get office hours on Wednesday, Career Live on Thursday. Now, Career Live will remain a public viewed stream, as will the question and answer session at 11 a.m. on Friday. But office hours and lunch and learn, which is second and third Tuesday of every month, will continue to. These will be strictly for subscribers only, and we will probably eventually all of it will be subscriber only. So we hope you'll become part of our group, your career community, and you can get. Not only do you get access to all this content, you'll have the newsletter that comes out daily with a quote of the day and a short commentary on the quote or another issue of importance to career management. And then we also have several other products that we're working on to help you build your career. Now, a lot of people say, well, building a career, John, I don't need this all the time. Building a career management is not looking for a job. It's the process of managing your brand, your reputation, and your strategy going forward. If you do not have a written career plan, you are hurting yourself. The research is so clear. And the Harvard Business Journal has said that the people who have written career plans tend to accomplish their goals more than those who don't. And guess what else? They also tend to make more money than the people who don't. And guess what else? The vast majority of people don't have a written career plan. So what does that say to you? It opens up a barn door wide opportunity for you to elevate your career because you can take advantage of a huge hole in the marketplace. It gives you leverage. Another thing I would encourage you to do is really be mindful of what's going on in the market. Pay attention. Don't just blow this stuff off and say, well, I've got a job. I don't need to worry about it. Your job can change on a dime. And it just did for about 175 people at Tufts. They weren't expecting to be laid off, and most of it was managers and non-clinical personnel. So we're back into our programming notes again tomorrow morning at 7:30, Career Live. At noon tomorrow, you'll have a replay of office hours this session. And then 11 a.m. on Friday, we have your career questions. We spend 30 minutes answering people's questions, and there are they are all over the place, and it's interesting. All of our streams right now are on YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook. We're going to be adding to that next year, but right now that's the three big ones, and so we hope that you will continue to track with us, watch the stuff, refer it to other people. If you know people who are struggling in their career, refer them to our content. There's a lot of content on YouTube that's free. We also, if you become a member in our your career community member group, you have 10 or 11 courses, about 8 or 9 hours of instruction on resumes, interviewing skills, career planning, networking, all of the key elements of managing a career. That's available to you online on demand as a manager, as a member of our group community. So thank you all very much. We hope to see you tomorrow morning at 7:30 for Career Live.